Howdy folks, Deacon Parsons here. If you'll pardon my poor Latin, there's an ancient maxim, silent einem leges inter arma, which means in time of war the law falls silent. This is a Roman legal axiom that's generally attributed to Cicero, who died in 43 BC. In broad terms, the concept isn't very controversial. Since war is a state in which so many things are turned topsy-turvy, we instinctively understand that normal laws do not apply. In peace, killing people and destroying things is generally wrong. In time of war, they are not only necessary, but praiseworthy. War is by definition a state of wrong. In time of war, we do what we have to do. But when we leave broad terms and generalities and get to specific individual cases, the consensus becomes less concrete. We become squeamish and distrustful of the usurpation of laws and rights. Now, this is not without valid historical precedent. Far too many times in history have the exigencies of war been used to crush freedom and destroy liberty permanently. When I first read 1984 and Animal House, they were science fiction. Today they seem to be political how-to manuals. So, is in time of war the law falls silent a constitutional precept? I regrettably believe that the answer is yes, and I'm going to use the least quoted amendment of the Bill of Rights to demonstrate this. Please note that I realize that this amendment has never been legally used to demonstrate this in a court of law. But considering how tenuous some of the legal gymnastics used in today's court decisions are, if I can make this connection, it's only a matter of time before some hotshot lawyer brings it to court. The Third Amendment states simply, "No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be proscribed by law." Well, okay, Deacon, what's your point? Is the U.S. government really trying to quarter troops in people's homes? Well, no. But look at the precept it codifies. Something that is completely and without a doubt unconstitutional in time of peace can constitutionally be forced upon a citizen in time of war by legislation. So, is the in time of war the law falls silent a constitutionally defensible legal precept? I must reluctantly concede that it is, despite the Third Amendment never having yet been invoked to defend it. Now, we have in U.S. history several instances where the exigencies of war have been used to deprive citizens of rights. One of these is Lincoln's suspension of habeas corpus during the Civil War. This controversial act was condemned by courts in its time, but it was supported by the military and was thus upheld in practice, if not law. Another egregious instance is the internment of some Japanese in World War II. Now, it's very popular with 20/20 hindsight for people to loudly declare that, if I were there, this would never have happened. I'm different than those evil people who perpetrated this injustice. I will never allow such a thing to happen again while I am alive. To be totally honest, 30-40 years ago, I was one of those people who made those kinds of statements. Young men seek justice, old men seek mercy. But the more one studies history, the more one realizes that such statements, however honestly and passionately made, are simply not true. The more you study history, the more you realize that those who came before us weren't all that different from us. In the cases of habeas corpus and the Japanese internment, if we had been in charge, if we had only known what Lincoln and Roosevelt knew, and more importantly, what they did not and could not know, we would have done the exact same thing that they did. Not because these men didn't know the difference between right and wrong, but because circumstances didn't give them a choice between right and wrong. Both were at war, and neither knew that victory was assured. Circumstances demanded that they choose the lesser of the available evils. Both Lincoln and Roosevelt made the best decisions they could at the time with the information they had in the context of the realities of the world as they existed. None of us can truly say that in their place we would have done anything differently. Now, this point was driven home for me many years ago while watching a documentary on Unit 731, a secret unit of the Imperial Japanese military. If you have a very strong stomach, go ahead and look it up. It was a covert biological and chemical warfare research unit that committed atrocities equal to and sometimes surpassing those of the Nazis. The worst part about the story is that the U.S. government covered it up. At the end of the war, the leaders of Unit 731 contacted the U.S. military with an offer. Unit 731 would surrender to the U.S. with all of their research in exchange for immunity, secrecy, and protection. If the U.S. military did not accept their offer, they would make it to the Soviets. We accepted their offer, quashed and denied the existence of the unit, and the perpetrators of those barbaric acts, some against our own soldiers, went on to live long and prosperous lives, most dying peaceably in old age. According to the documentary, in the official orders covering up the heinous crimes, there's a handwritten note from one of the officers to future generations. Paraphrased as best I can remember it, it said this: "We know how horrible what we are doing is, but please understand, we don't know what research the Japanese have, and we can't take the chance of the Russians getting it." Lincoln's habeas corpus affected hundreds of people. The internment of the Japanese affected about 120,000 people, 60% of whom were U.S. citizens. Today we have a program based on the exigencies of war that affects everyone in the U.S. and across the globe. It's the NSA. Since many people are talking about you and nobody seems to be talking to you, I thought I'd tell you what I think straight up and to your face. Well, as to your face as I can get with a faceless secret government agency. I don't trust you. I can't trust you. History has taught us that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Everything I've learned in history and my lived experience tells me that government agencies, no matter how well intended in the beginning, take on a life of their own and move to increase their power at the expense of my freedom and my liberty. The only federal government agencies and employees that have never failed me are the military. I know what you're doing is unconstitutional. You know that what you're doing is unconstitutional. Every fiber in my being screams that letting you keep the power that you have will come back to harm me in the future. You tell me that what you do is necessary to providing the common defense, but you can't prove this to me without warning our enemies and degrading our ability to stop them. I don't like this, but I understand this. You tell me that to take away these tools and we will significantly be less safe. I don't feel like you're right, but I'm not positive sure that you're wrong. Since 9/11, either Al-Qaeda decided they didn't want to do another major attack, or someone has stopped them. Even if a major attack eventually happens, I guess I have to give you credit for that. And here's the rub. The cost of me being wrong is so very high. Not in conceptual or philosophical terms, but in real dead bodies. And so I'm left like Lincoln and Roosevelt and the officer in Unit 731. I must choose not between right and wrong, but between which evil is the lesser. And so I lay in some extra ammunition, set my rifle out handy, grip my teeth, and say to you, all right, this is war. Do what you have to do. You do not have my enthusiastic support. You have my grudging, skeptical tolerance. But you need to understand this. Anyone who will trade liberty for security doesn't deserve either. I am not giving you my liberty. I'm loaning it to you for the duration. At the end of the war, I will have it back. We will consider the graves we don't dig as most of the interest on the loan, but I do have one more thing to ask of you. Be worthy of the trust that we've put in you. Don't become another rogue agency. Make us proud of you. Prove me wrong. Show me that there are people in the world with character and patriotism that will not be corrupted. All wars end, and this one will too. When that happens and we write the history of what we did, please be the exception to the rule. Don't let us look back and think that another 9/11 attack would have been the lesser evil. Do not betray us. Be as faithful as a U.S. Marine. Be as tough and dedicated as a Navy SEAL. Be as constant as those that guard the tombs of the unknowns. Be the heroes that we need you to be, even if we never get to sing your praises. Love your maker, love your mate, and do what's right because it's right, and devil take the hindmost, even if in time of war what is right comes down to choosing the least evil option.